Welcome back to the Blaise XPerience, everyone. So excited to be back here with you again. Today you are back and joining us for episode number 30. Yeah, that's right. It's our 30th episode, and I'm very, proud of that, and I'm very happy to keep continuing this podcast. When I started this, I didn't think we'd necessarily get this far, but, we're trucking along, and we're continuing to grow, and I'm really excited about that. So thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone continuing to support the podcast. But that being said, this is a Saturday, of course, so we are actually launching another State of Decay episode, just as we do every Saturday. And today's episode is going to be on bases in Cascade HIlls. Previously, I've done an episode on Drucker County bases, so it's time that I get into bases on another map on Cascade HIlls, and we're going to talk about all those bases today. Kind of like the Drucker County episode, we're going to go through all the bases, talk about great things about them, maybe some of the flaws that some of them might have, and then at the end we're going to rank them. And I will say up front that unlike the Drucker County episode, it was a lot harder for me to rank these bases on Cascade HIlls. I think a lot of these bases on Cascade HIlls are pretty well balanced, honestly. So it was a little bit harder for me to rank that because Drucker County, for example, there was one base in particular that I really didn't like. But there's no bases on Cascade HIlls that I really, think are a horrible base. So that is a good thing for sure. But before we get into that, we just have a couple of, things to take care of for podcast news first. I will announce that our next stream will be Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And we will be streaming some more Vigor. So Vigor is that game by Bohemia Interactive if you haven't checked it out yet. So if you haven't checked it out, tune into my stream on Tuesday and I'll stream some Vigor. I did stream some more State of Decay today, and I'm recording this on a Friday. I stream State of Decay every Friday from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., and then if I have extra time, I usually try to stream some State of Decay if I have extra time in there as well. And then I will announce that our next episode of the podcast, next Wednesday, we will have an episode on Sea of Thieves. So, tune into that if you'd like some more Sea of Thieves coverage. This will be an episode on the lore book for Sea of Thieves. So the lore book is a physical book that you can go buy for Sea of Thieves, and I'm going to be talking about all the things in that lore book. So that'll be a fun episode, and we'll get into that. But last but not least, I have been teasing throughout the last couple episodes of the podcast that I might have some State of Decay 2 news coming up, and I think it's time we share a little bit of that news. What do you think? So, all this week and leading up to this week, I've been working very hard on planning some State of Decay stuff, and I'm going to reveal a little bit about that now. I'm not going to reveal the entire thing yet, but as we move closer to the event, then we will reveal more of it. But what is this event I'm talking about? Well, myself and P1 Gamer. P1 Gamer is actually the streamer that was featured on the last Undead Lab stream. He's a great guy, and you should definitely go check his stream out. It's twitch.tv/P1Gamer, I believe. I will double check that and get that link in the show notes for you if you want to check him out. But he also has a Mixer and YouTube channel, so just search P1 Gamer and you'll be able to find him at all those. But P1 Gamer and I are actually collaborating and putting together a giant event for State of Decay content. So what it's going to be is the week that the new DLC launches for State of Decay, that DLC launches September 12th. From September 9th to September 15th, that entire week, P1 and I have worked together to put on what we're calling DecayFest. And now DecayFest is going to be a week-long celebration of State of Decay, and that's why we're calling it DecayFest. We thought it was a pretty good name, pretty fitting. So this will be the first ever DecayFest, and what DecayFest is going to be is a lot of content creators for State of Decay coming together to, give back to the community and the developers. So this DecayFest event, what this is supposed to be is a way to say thank you to Undead Labs, first of all, because, we really appreciate that they made this game and they're doing such a great job developing it and giving us further content to enjoy. So thank you very much, Undead Labs. This is first of all a thank you to you because all of you at Undead Labs are working very hard on this game and we really appreciate it. So all of us content creators, we really appreciate it and we want to thank you sincerely for that. So this is first of all a thank you to you that we're putting on this event. Secondly, this is a way to get the community together and try and, have a community run event that we all get together and just try and enjoy the game and just enjoy everything it has to offer. And thirdly, it's a way for all the content creators to try and, bounce off of each other and try and work together to create something that everyone can enjoy together. So that's kind of like the purpose of it. But, thank you, Undead Labs. And I appreciate everyone also who is joining this event so far. So far, as of this recording, we have 5 Mixer streamers, 5 Twitch streamers, 3 YouTubers, and myself podcasting. So far we have 15 content creators for State of Decay taking part in this event. And basically how the event is going to work, every day for that week from September 9th to September 15th, we are going to have new content for the community to enjoy. So we're going to have streams, we're going to have YouTube videos, we're going to have podcasts. It's going to be a week-long celebration of State of Decay, and P1 and myself have worked very hard to organize all this, and we can't promise that it'll be set up perfectly to where there's going to be something 24/7, but we're trying to set it up as close as possible to where if you are wanting some State of Decay content, you can tune in any day, anytime, and find that content. That's what we're trying to set up. There's probably going to be a little bit of gaps, but, say Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, you want to tune in and watch some State of Decay. We're going to try and have a streamer on that you can go, Monday, 3 p.m., look at the schedule. You can go visit that streamer and watch that streamer stream some State of Decay. And that's basically what we're trying to do. And we're trying to support each other as content creators and make a way that everyone can kind of benefit in this situation. I mean, we think that all the content creators are benefiting from this. We think the community is benefiting from this. And we think, it helps Undead Labs too, because it gets more word out about the game and it gets more hype on the game. And that's what we want to do. We want to hype up the game and we want to just celebrate the game as a whole because it's a great game and I love this game. And, I know I'm speaking for P1 as well that we both really love this game and we really want to see it succeed. So I think this is a way that, benefits everyone involved and really makes for a very fun event. So we will release more info on that coming up, but I wanted to, let everyone know that that's what I've been working on. So you're going to see a lot more info about that coming soon, but I'm working on the schedule with the other content creators now, and we're trying to come up with a schedule that works well and gives a lot of content to everyone. Basically Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, that will be days that we're providing content, that is based on what we have right now. And then Wednesday, the DLC comes out. So Wednesday, September 12th, from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, a lot of that content will be centered around the Daybreak DLC. So you're going to get half the week where we're, celebrating what's available in the base game, and half the week we're probably going to be celebrating what's available in the DLC. So we have a lot planned. We have some co-streams planned. We're hopefully going to have a couple of giveaways. We don't have a ton to give away right now, but I know I still have a DLC code for the Independence Pack, so I am going to give one code away for that at some point during the week. And I think P1 said he might have a couple of things to do for a giveaway, so we're going to try and do some giveaways, but we don't have a lot of things to give away right now, but, we'll try and do a few giveaways, but overall, it's just a way to celebrate the game and just celebrate having some State of Decay. So, it's going to be a great week, and I hope everyone is able to tune in for that week. I mean, it's going to be all week long, so I would hope that anyone listening to this has the time to, tune in at some point during the week. We're not expecting everyone to tune in every day, but if you want to tune in every day, that's even better. Then we'll have some content for you every day. But we're going to have some great YouTube videos, we're going to have some great podcasting, and some great streams. And we found some, great content creators to take part in this, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to it. But that being said, that was the big thing I've been working on for so long, and I'm really excited to actually announce it now. It's something that I've been very excited to be working on, and I'm even more excited now that I can announce it. So very happy to announce it, and I'm very happy that we are getting the ball rolling with this. And if this goes well, which we're, hoping it will, then we will have more community events in the future. So, don't expect this to be the last community event. Hopefully at some point we'll have like a DecayFest 2 or something. A DecayFest 2 to honor State of Decay 2. That'd be kind of fun. So we're hoping, to have more events in the future, but we'll see how this one goes first. And from this one, we'll kind of take it from there. But if you want to, definitely get in touch with P1 or myself. If you are a content creator and you do a lot of content creation for State of Decay and you aren't a part of this already, definitely get in touch with P1 or myself and let us know. There's still a little bit of time to join in on this if you're a content creator. Not a ton of time left, but if you, hear this over the weekend, then we could probably get you in. But we're trying to finalize the schedule fairly soon. So there's not much time left, but if you get in touch with us pretty soon, then we might be able to fit you in still. And if you are a player or fan of State of Decay, then, just sit back and wait for some more news. And we're going to have some more news coming out soon. And I hope you all enjoy it. But that's basically all I had for, news at the top of the podcast. So now we will get into the bases in Cascade HIlls. So first off, we're going to talk about all the bases and then we're going to rank them. And, that'll be kind of how we do this podcast. So the first base we're talking about in Cascade HIlls is the Bridge Fort. Now, the Bridge Fort, it costs you 500 influence. It's going to take 4 people to claim it. And these are the existing facilities there. It has 2 shelter beds, 3 parking spots, a western watch post, an eastern watch post, 1 large slot open, 1 open indoor slot, and 2 open outdoor slots. So all in total, it has 1 large and 3 small slots. And it's going to have, some beds and a little bit of parking there for you. And then it has the 2 watch posts. So with this base, aesthetically, it's one of the coolest bases aesthetically. I mean, having a base out of a fort, that's really cool. So aesthetically, it's one of the coolest bases. But in functionality, this base doesn't really function that well to keep you there a long time. Because this is probably going to be, the next base you go to after your starting base, but it doesn't offer a lot for you that the starting base doesn't already offer. I mean, the starting base already has a couple of parking spots. It only offers 1 more parking spot than that. The starting base actually has more beds than the Bridge Fort, so you're losing beds if you go here. And then this only has 1 large slot that the starting base doesn't have, so for 500 influence, you're paying for 1 large slot, you're paying to lose beds, and gain a parking spot. And then you have the watch post too, but the watch post I don't really factor in too much because, I mean, not being able to do anything else, these 2 watch posts aren't going to really help you out that much because you can't really do a whole lot with this base. So I think this is a base that, if you haven't tried it out yet, it's definitely fun to try it out just for the aesthetic appeal to it. So, this is a base that I would say is a novelty base that you definitely want to try this base out at least once. Try it out, spend a couple of days there, make it early in your playthrough though. I wouldn't do this as a late playthrough, but make it early in your playthrough, try it out and kind of enjoy that base. But unfortunately, as much as I love the aesthetics of the Bridge Fort, I probably won't be going back there anytime soon because, once you get the feel of it the first time, it's not really that functional to help you out. I mean, your bed situation is going to be completely out of whack because you only have 2 shelter beds. There's not really much you can do with that. It's if you want to have a bigger community there. I mean, for 4 people, you can make it work if you have like a beds outpost, something like that, but if you want to have a large community at the Bridge Fort, you can't really do it. You can't sustain there at all because you only have 3 small slots. You're probably going to use an infirmary there. You're probably going to use a workshop there. And you're probably going to use that 3rd slot for like a garden or maybe a hydroponics or whatever you have the capacity to have based on your characters. But that's basically all your slots already taken up. And then you have 1 large slot. So I mean, if you're building your leader building, that's basically all your things already picked for you. And you don't really have any choice as a player. You could build like a lounge there, but I mean, there's just not a lot of options with the Bridge Fort, which I do understand that the developers, when they made this one, they probably didn't intend it to be like where a large community goes to. So, if this is a small community going here, it definitely does sustain for a small community. But I mean, if you're planning on having a community that's more than 5 people, I would say anything over 5 people, it's really hard to sustain here very well. So I would say 5 is like the max you ever want to have here. And that's why for me, because I'm, experienced in the game now, it doesn't really suit me to go to the Bridge Fort that much. But The aesthetic appeal, I will say that the art team did an amazing job with the look of this Bridgefort because the look really is awesome and it feels really cool to live in a Bridgefort. So aesthetically, I love it. It's just, I wish the base was designed to function for a bigger community. Which, if you're listening to this now before Daybreak launches, I know that Daybreak is going to have some facilities that come that are Red Talon facilities that will actually help with situations like this, that will make some of the smaller bases a little bit more viable, because like the Red Talon barracks that's coming, if you stick a Red Talon barracks in the base like this, that actually helps you have a bigger community there. So there's going to be things coming in the future, I think, that will help correct some of these situations, but I think right now the Bridgefort is a base that if you haven't tried it out once, definitely try it out once, because it really feels nice to live there. But if you've already tried it out once, I would say probably don't go back to the Bridgefort. But next we have the Church on the Hill. So the Church on the Hill costs you 1,000 influence to get it. It takes 5 people to claim this base. And the existing facilities, it has a bell tower, it has 4 parking spots, and it has 2 clearable slots of pews. Those both become small slots afterwards. It also has a passive slot called Gorgeous Environment, which gives you morale boost. And then it has a couple of open slots. It has a large open slot, a small indoor open slot, and then 2 small outdoor open slots. So if you were to clear the church pews, then basically what you have with this base all in total is you have 1 large slot and 5 small slots. So it's honestly, a pretty good amount of space. I mean, 5 small slots, you can do a lot of things with those small slots, but it does always stink when a base doesn't have 2 large slots, because it's very nice and it's like a luxury to have 2 large slots, because any base that has 2 large slots is usually a base I'm going to prefer. I think, getting to 3 large slots, you don't need as much, but I think 2 large slots is probably the sweet spot, because having 2 large slots with some small slots with that, I think that's what I personally prefer as a player. But I will give this space props that it has 4 parking spots. That is very nice. And honestly, the location of the space is really cool too. I mean, it's what you think it would be, a church on the hill, and the aesthetics, again, like, I think the bases in Cascade HIlls, for whatever reason, I like the look of them a lot better than some of the bases in, like, say, Drucker County. Not to say, the Drucker County bases aren't great. Like, I love the feel of all the bases overall. Like, I think the team did a great job building all the bases, but I think the art team especially did a great job with the look and the feel of the bases at Cascade HIlls. And I think Brian Giammi, who did a lot of the design work on these bases, did a great job designing them as well. I don't know if he technically did all the art for them or if, somebody else helped with that, but honestly, these bases, they just look amazing. And the Church on the Hill is no exception, because it really feels like you're living at a church on the hill. Like, it does what the job is supposed to do, and I love that about it. I will say the bell tower that comes with it, that is a nice feature. It gives you, a little bit of help with threat level. And then if you use the bell, what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to give you -7 threat for 31 minutes. And then it's supposed to cause a zombie attack, because what it says in the description is caution, causes zombie attack in yellow. I even tried it as soon as today, and when I rang the bell, no zombies came. It didn't cause a zombie attack. So I don't know if that's a bug that, maybe the devs, if they listen to this, want to look into that. But the bell at the Church on the Hill, I think it's the only base in State of Decay 2 that actually has a feature like this, where you can, purposely try to draw zombies to you. I think maybe the movie projector in Knight's Family Drive-In does that same effect, possibly, but the bell literally says on it, if you use it, it's supposed to cause a zombie attack, and I didn't have that happen. So that's maybe something that the devs can look into, when they are working on this next patch that's going to be upcoming at some point. But that bell tower didn't seem to work properly for me, which for a lot of players, that's a good thing, because you're basically getting only the positive effect. Because I did get the -7 threat, so I got the -7 threat, but I didn't get a zombie attack. So basically, you just hit a button and you get -7 threat, and there's no, negative effect to that at all. So for the player, it's definitely nice, but for me as an experienced player, I actually wanted that zombie attack. Like, I was kind of excited. I'm like, oh, I get a free zombie attack. Let me take it. Let me hit this bell. Let me get those zombies. I actually was excited for the zombie attack, but then it was kind of a letdown when I'm like, oh, well, no zombies came. That kind of sucks. I mean, I kind of wanted to fight some zombies. So it depends on, how you're looking at it. If you're someone that's, having a more difficult time surviving, then it would definitely help you to have it this way because you're literally just getting positive effect and that's it. But for me, I wanted to use it as like a free way to have a zombies attack me because I kind of like when a horde comes to my base and I have to defend my base. And it would be really cool if this worked the way I think it was intended to work, where like if I could just hit this every 30 minutes and be like, okay, zombie attack, 30 minutes, zombie attack, zombie attack. You could almost make it like sort of like a mini daybreak mode. It could be like a mini horde mode for you where you could just have constant waves of zombies coming in every 30 minutes, which would be kind of fun to use it that way. Which I know obviously the daybreak mode is going to do a horde a lot better, but this would be kind of fun to use like a mini horde. Like, I've been playing for a couple hours. I kind of feel like a horde now. Let me go hit my bell and, let me have a horde come to my base. So it'd be kind of cool if it did work that way. I feel like it was supposed to be designed that way, but maybe there's a bug with it, or maybe the text that says it's supposed to cause a zombie attack, maybe that text is inaccurate, and maybe that text was supposed to say, might cause a zombie attack instead of causes. So it might just be something as simple as that. Maybe, whoever put the text on there, maybe the text is supposed to say, this may cause a zombie attack. That way it's like a chance to cause a zombie attack. Because the way the text is written right now, it sounds like it definitely causes one when it doesn't definitely cause one from what my experience is. But overall, this base is pretty good. I mean, for the price of it though, it's not the greatest value for the price, I would say. Just because, let's look at it from the starting base perspective. I mean, from the starting base, you have your 3 small slots already, right? So you're going from that to this, so you would have 2 extra small slots and 1 extra large slot if you went right from the starting base to here. And you will get 2 extra parking spots, which is nice too. So you get 2 extra parking spots, you get 2 extra small slots, and you get an extra large slot. But the problem is, this does not come with any built-in bases, and I think a lot of these bases of this size suffer from that, because if it doesn't come with any built-in beds at all, it does make it a little bit hard because, it sounds like a lot, 1 large slot and 5 small slots, but what the surface of that doesn't tell you is the surface of that doesn't tell you you're going to have to deal with beds. So you're going to have to find a way to get beds in there somehow. So you might have to use, 2 of those small slots just to make beds. And if you have to use 2 of those small slots just to make beds, you're pretty much right back to where the bridge fort was. Because say you took up 2 small slots with beds, right? Now you're back to 1 large slot and 3 open slots for small slots. So basically, you're just gaining 1 large slot, you're taking care of your bed situation, and you have 2 parking spots. So for that reason, cost effectiveness, it's not that cost effective to go to this base, because if you look at it that way, you have your beds already taken up. You have to have an infirmary, that's another slot. You got to have your workshop probably, that's another slot. But basically, you're not going to have a lot of room to work with. So, and if you take away the infirmary and the workshop as well, so you're building infirmary, workshop, your 2 bed slots, all you're really going to have is 1 small slot and 1 large slot to use how you want. So it doesn't offer you a lot of variety if you look at it that way. And with the bell tower not working the way it's supposed to, it kind of takes away some of the appeal of it. I mean, it is really fun to sit in that bell tower because it does have a very nice view of the whole area, and it's really nice to sit up there. But I mean, for the most part, the way I look at this, you're paying for a large slot and 2 parking spaces, which, as a lot of experienced players know, you can stretch your parking spaces out. You can get, a few different cars in 1 parking spot. So, having 2 parking spots, you can still make use of that. Having 4 is obviously better, but I mean, paying 1,000 influence for this base, I don't think it's something I'm really, keen on doing. So it's not a horrible base, but I think for the cost, it doesn't really benefit you that well, because you're going to have that situation where you have no beds and you're going to have to deal with that situation. And that can be kind of a crummy situation to deal with if you don't know what you're doing, because if you don't know the best ways to get beds into a tight area like that, if you don't know, I have my options. I have a barracks, I can make some beds outposts. If you don't know all the ways to switch things around to make a base effective, it could be very tricky to make this base work for you. Because it's my understanding, it's my personal feeling that most of the bases in State of Decay 2, despite what, people say about any of the bases, majority of the bases you can make work. I mean, I think there's 21 total bases. I think there's 7 on each map. So out of that 21, there's probably like 5 or less bases that I personally feel you can't make work no matter what you do. But most of the bases, if you know what you're doing, you can make it work. So you're gaining you're gaining materials, you're gaining meds, you're gaining food. Most of the bases you can make work if you know what you're doing. So this is definitely one of those bases. I mean, I could probably make this base work if I wanted to, honestly, but it's just not something that is going to be as advantageous, and it's going to be something that you have to be more experienced to make this base viable for you, I would say. So for anyone that's a little bit, less experienced right now, I would say when you get more experience, maybe try this base out and then try to make it work for you. But I would say try to go for one of the bases that is a little bit more suitable for players that are still learning the game more. It's definitely not a knock on anyone. If you're newer, then, that's great. We're happy to have you as part of this community because we love everyone in this community, is very friendly for the most part. And we love new players in this community. So, welcome to the community. I'm glad you're actually playing the game. But if you're newer, then I would say wait a little bit on this base because this base is going to be a little bit harder for you to use right off the bat. And, if you are newer, definitely get in contact with me if you want. I'd be happy to help you out with anything you need. But we're going to kind of move on to the next base now. The next base is the corner office, and I like the feel of this base, honestly. Like, the first time I went to Cascade HIlls, this is the base that I finished my playthrough on. So, this is a base that you can end the game on because this is the base I used right up to the end of my playthrough, and I beat the Trader Legacy with this base. So, this is the base that I beat the Trader Legacy on. So, it is viable enough to do that, but I would say it's not the best solution you have in this map. It's going to cost you 1,000 influence to go here. It's going to take 5 people to claim. And the existing facilities it has a cheek eatery kitchen. It has an overlook. It has 2 shelter beds, 2 parking slots. The open slots it has 1 large slot, 1 small indoor slot, and 3 small outdoor slots. So all in all, this base has 1 large slot, 3 small slots. You're going to have your overlook, which functions fairly well. Basically, it's a couple floors, of an office, and you go up to the top floor. It's kind of like the roof of the office building, and there's an overlook looking over the roof of the office building, and you kind of see the streets. You can kind of see a little bit around you, but it's not that high up, so you can't see a lot, but you can see a little bit of the surrounding area. It's kind of a decent overlook, and you're having 1 small slot on the roof, and you have a couple of small slots, on the next floor down, and then the bottom floor. I think you have some outside. One of the biggest drawbacks to this base is the parking situation. It only has 2 parking spots, and the way the parking is situated, it's kind of like an enclosed area. So with a lot of bases, if it has a couple of parking spots, you can usually get a lot of cars to fit into that gap and make them count as being parked. So you can probably fit 3, maybe if you really finagle it, maybe 4 cars onto 1 parking spot and have them count as parked. But with this base, the way the parking is situated, it's a lot harder to make the parking work because, it has 2 parking spots and you're probably only going to be able to fit 4 to 5 cars in that area just because the area is so small. So it's not like, say the abandoned strip mall where you have a lot of room to park cars or something. You don't have a lot of room to actually use your cars. I mean, you could park them on the street people would have done if they actually worked at this building probably. So you could technically do that, but you're not going to have them kind of parked. And then again, there's also the bed issue. So, you'd have to have a lot of bed outpost, or you'd have to have some of your small slots taken up by beds. And that really devalues this base because you're going to have to use at least one of those slots for beds probably. And then if you do that, you're going to have to use, one for an infirmary, one for a workshop probably. So you're basically back down to that same 1 large slot and 1 small slot. So again, the 1,000 influence, it's not the best use of your influence for this, I think. Which I think is kind of the case with a lot of these 1,000 influence bases. I think a lot of these 1,000 influence bases, they're nice to try out just to kind of see how it feels in the base, but overall, the 1,000 cost influence bases aren't worth your influence as much, I would say. But, I mean, having the kitchen there is nice. You can make, like, nutritious snacks if you had someone with cooking skill, things like that. So it's not that bad. I don't know, there's not really a lot else to say about this base. I mean, I used it for a while. It can get the job done. You can make it viable, but it's not a base that you really want to make viable, I would say. Like, it's kind of like a lot of these bases where if you had to, you could make this base work. But there's other options that are just more worth your time and more worth your influence. And they're just more fun to use, I would say, because, you know, again, kind of like the church on the hill we just talked about, I would say it's harder to make a base like this work. And, you know, maybe now that I'm thinking about it more, it seems like the system works a little backwards in a sense that, you know, the more experienced you are, the better you can use these 1,000 influence bases. The less experienced you are, you're going to want like some of those 3,500 influence bases that kind of like do more of the things for you. So it seems a little weird in a way, like it's not like Undead Lab's fault exactly, because it's kind of hard to design it in a way that has, you know, even progression like that. But for a newer player, it's actually harder for a newer player to use these smaller bases because they have to better know what they're doing to make good use of that base. So for a newer player, it's actually better for them to use the bases that cost more because those bases are easier to use since there's a lot more space available. For a more experienced player, you know, they can still use the higher cost bases, obviously, but the more experienced players are the ones that could really make these 1,000 cost influence bases work more. So it's kind of unfortunate in some ways that for a new player, you know, you're probably moving to one of these bases right after your home base, and it's probably a little bit hard for you to make that work for community. But at the same time, if you're newer at this game, it takes 5 people to claim the corner office. You're probably not going to have that much more than that. So with 5 people, you can make this work a little bit more, because the way I'm looking at a lot of these bases is, can you sustain a, you know, full scale community here? And a lot of these bases, you know, that are smaller, it's hard to make that work. You can make it work if you really finagle things, but it's harder to do that. Now, if you go with like the 5 people that is recommended here, you can definitely make that work. And I think that's kind of the issue that a lot of players that have played for a while are running into now, is the bigger you build your community, there's less bases that can actually sustain what you're building. So it's kind of unfortunate in a way, because instead of doing a lot of, you know, playthroughs, a lot of people are doing a lot of playthroughs where they keep the same community and keep that community going. And if you're doing that, there's less reason to use these smaller bases. So that might be something that Undead Labs might want to look into in the future, to like how we can get players back to these smaller bases, which I think with the Red Talon facilities, that's part of what they're doing, is having facilities that are better, so it gets players to use these smaller bases more often, which I'm definitely all for that, because I like using variety. So I think it's a great thing that they're making these Red Talon facilities that will hopefully get players to use the smaller bases more often. But I mean, the corner office, you know, it's not the worst bait in the world, but it's got the 2 parking slots, which is the biggest knock against it probably. And the bed situation is the other knock. I mean, with the bed situation, it's kind of hard to make that work a little bit. But next we have the Just to Know house. The Just to Know house is your starting base for this map. So a lot of people probably already know what this one does, but it has 3 people to claim it, which I've never officially got a answer on that. If, like, say you switched maps and you only had 3 people and one of those died, I'm not certain if you can actually claim a starting base still. So that's one thing I've never officially tried, or I've never officially asked the devs about yet. So, you know, I'm not sure if you only have 2 people, if you're still allowed to claim a starting base. Because technically, you wouldn't have the 3 people you usually start with at the start of the game, but this base is free on influence, so I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure if you'd have to... Actually, now that I think about it, though, you're not going to have the issue now that I think about it, because now after patch 3.0, you're supposed to, when you switch maps, automatically go into a base, so you shouldn't have that issue then. So if you only had 2 people left, you should automatically go into this base. So now that I've talked through that, you know, you shouldn't have any issues. But it's 0 influence, so it's free. and it's 3 people to claim usually. The existing facilities, you have the chef's kitchen, the master bedroom, the double bunk room, clearable trash slot, 2 parking slots, and 2 open small outdoor slots. So all in all, you have 3 small slots with this base, and you have, a decent bed situation. I mean, the way they made these starting bases, honestly, Undead Labs did a great job, and I'm sure Brian Giammi was a big part of this, and these bases were designed very well for the starting bases because they really sustain really well for a starting base. For a giant community, you're not going to be able to have a giant community in this base, but for a starting base, like, this really provides you everything you need to start out, because 3 small slots, you can do a lot with those 3 small slots when you have a brand new community. And then it has a kitchen. It's got, great amount of beds for the situation you need. It's got the double bunk room. It's got that, big bed. So it's got 2 parking slots. That's great starting out. And it's free. So, I mean, honestly, like, the fact that it's free, this base provides better value than some of the 500 or even 1,000 cost bases. So because this base costs nothing and it provides you that much for nothing, it has better value for you than a lot of the 500 influence bases or the 1,000 influence bases. So in a lot of situations, I would almost recommend staying here until you get enough influence to buy, some of the other bases than moving to like a 500 cost base. But I think it's good to at least, try out every base in the game at least once, or just at least claim them so you can kind of see the feel of it. But once you've done that, I think this starting base, the Just to Know house, it provides more value to you to actually just stay here and build up your influence and then get the base you want. Because say you went to the Bridge Fort after this, the Bridge Fort isn't a horrible base by any means, but the value isn't there to pay 500 influence to switch to the Bridge House. Or the Bridge Fort, sorry. The value is just not there to do that. You'd be better off staying at the Just to Know house and building up your influence. Yeah, I'm not going to spend any more time on that, really, because, everyone pretty much knows what the starting base does. Next, we have a pretty interesting base. We have Lock and Key Self-Storage. This will cost you 1,500 influence to claim. It takes 6 people to claim this base. And the existing facilities it has elaborate storage, 2 shelter beds, a secret distillery, 3 parking slots, 1 watchtower, 2 abandoned lockers that are clearable, 1 large slot, and 2 small outdoor slots. So, all in all, this base is 1 large slot and 4 small slots. So, it has pretty good value with that. I wish it had 2 large slots technically, but it does have some nice built-ins. It has the secret distillery, which if you have a trader leader, which I do right now, having that secret distillery already built in, that's really cool because you don't have to build a still yourself. And honestly, the job that they did on this built-in, like, if you just go check out this base and check out that secret distillery, like, the art and how that looks is amazing. They did such a great job designing this actual facility because this secret distillery, it looks so cool seeing all that place there. You have like empty jugs and different things like that. And you could really see how they use this as a secret distillery. So, this is probably one of my favorite locations just from the looks of it because the way they designed this base, it looks really cool. It looks like, like you'd see as storage lockers. And basically, these storage lockers are where you're putting all your stuff. So this secret distillery is in a storage locker. And that is really cool as a concept because, there's probably somebody out there that has a storage locker and they have a secret distillery in their storage locker. There's probably somewhere in America that's happening. So, or, let's not even limit to just America. There's probably somewhere else in the world that that's happening too. So that's a really cool concept, like that they actually thought of the application of that where, what might somebody have in their storage locker? Hey, maybe they have a distillery in their storage locker. Maybe they do. So that's a really cool concept that the team thought of, and major props to them for thinking of that because that is something that could actually happen technically. I don't think, there's probably a lot of distilleries in storage lockers, but there's got to be one somewhere in the world, right? I'd have to imagine somebody's doing it in the world. But the aesthetic of that just looks amazing. And also this watchtower you get here, the watchtower is really cool because it has a nice view of the area and it's just fun to sit up in that watchtower and look over the area. And probably the highlight of this base, honestly, like even more than things I've already talked about, the elaborate storage. This elaborate storage is amazing because it gives you plus 45 storage for everything. So literally everything, you're going to have 45 storage. And that is huge because every, fuel, you're going to have food, meds, everything's going to have 45 storage. And that's really nice. Because normally you can get some things up to that level, but, say you have like a fire safe storage, you can get to your ammo and your fuel up to 45, but you can't get your meds up to 45. So like you're going to have drawbacks to most of these other storages. If you have like a upgraded material storage where you can store more materials, but a lot of these level 3 storages, they have certain things you're not going to have as much of. With this elaborate storage at lock and key, you're going to have 45 for everything. The only drawback to that is you can't actually place a facility mod in there. And I feel like they made it this way as a balancing issue, because if you could place a facility mod in there as well to gain more storage on top of this elaborate storage, then in that case, it might be a little bit too unbalanced. So maybe they did some tests with that and it was too unbalanced to do that. But even without being able to place a mod in there, like it's really cool to actually use the storage, because you're going to have storage for whatever you need pretty much. And you're not really going to need to use your mods as much because, 45 is plenty to store anything in your base. So that is very handy. In terms of the slots available, I do wish there was another large slot available, but 4 small slots, it is, decent enough. Because you're still going to have that beds issue. You only have 2 shelter beds, so you're going to have to deal with the beds issue somehow. So you're probably going to have to use 1 small slot for beds or make a barracks or something like that. But, if you have that bed situation taken care of with one of the slots, then what you can do is use another slot for infirmary. You can use another slot for a workshop, and you're pretty good to go. You still have a large slot and a small slot to work with. So you can make this base work. It might be a little bit harder with the food situation. You might have to have the right community members to make this work with the food situation, or use your outposts because there's not a lot of wiggle room there. But I think this base is pretty good, and I think it can work for you. Aesthetically, it's definitely a fun base to use, I think. Like aesthetically, I really like the look of this base too, because having those storage lockers like that and, being able to place facilities in them, it's really cool lore-wise because, you think of the lore of this and like somebody was using that storage locker before the zombie apocalypse happened, and then it got turned into something else, and it's really cool to think of that. But overall, it's a pretty good base, honestly. The highlight is that elaborate storage. Like, that is really nice to have that. So yeah, I definitely love having the elaborate storage there. But that's pretty much all to say about this base. There's not any huge drawbacks. The biggest drawback is just the shelter bed situation, which unfortunately that's the drawback with a lot of these bases, is that it doesn't have a great situation to deal with the beds issue. And the parking is only 3 slots, so you could have some more parking there probably, but it's a pretty good base though, honestly. But moving on, next we have the container fort, which a lot of people like to use this base, and it's the favorite base of a lot of people. It does cost 3,500 influence to claim it, and it takes 8 people to claim this. You have to have 8 people to claim this base. The existing facilities, it has a fire safe storage level 3, it has 3 parking spots, it has a workshop level 3, and then it has a slot passive built-in barracks level 2, which provides 8 beds, and it has a passive slot castle doctrine, which allows you to assign 4 armed guards to protect the community, and it's no ammo cost to maintain that. Open slots, it has 2 large slots and 5 small outlaw slots. So basically, this base has the space to do whatever you want, pretty much. It's the closest thing in State of Decay 2 to having an open base where you can, sky's the limit, you can do whatever you want and, knock yourself out. This is the closest thing to that in State of Decay 2. Honestly, I think this base is so good that it's actually too unbalanced. I think, in my view, I know this would upset a lot of people, but I like to have things very balanced because I like playing games that are more balanced, and I like, having a lot of choices. And I think this base is too overpowered that Undead Labs should try and nerf it a little bit. Because, for example, that slot passive that gives you 8 built-in beds with the barracks level 2, that is ridiculous. Because on top of everything else, you already have all the beds you need. And that is just ridiculous because I think if they take that away, if they just take away that passive slot and you don't have the Barracks level 2 included, then I think in that situation, it balances that space out pretty nice. But I think with that on there, it makes the base too overpowered because you don't have to worry about beds. You don't have to worry about having a workshop. You already have one. You don't have to worry about storage. Your storage is already built up for you. I mean, you pretty much don't have to worry about anything. Like, you already have your beds. You already have your storage. You already have your workshop. All you really have to do is build an infirmary and then build whatever you want and try it out. I mean, and that's the problem I have for this base. Like, this base is great for a beginner. I mean, for a beginning player, this is the base you want because this base will allow you the room to learn about the facilities. So if you don't know what a lot of facilities do and you want to just play around with them and test them out, this is the base to do that at because this base has everything for the most part that you need already built in, and all the open slots for it. All you have to do with those slots is just play around with them and see what works. Oh, if I build a lounge here, what's going to happen if I build a lounge here? Oh, maybe I can build an auto shop. Let's see what an auto shop does for me. You can actually play around with it and build different facilities. So I think this base is great for a newer player, but I think for an experienced player like myself, for example, it's still a great base. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's an amazing base and it does pretty much everything you want. But problem I have is that for an experienced player, it does make things a little bit too easy, I would say, because there's not a lot of thinking involved in, designing this base. I mean, sure, it has a lot of slots, so technically there's a lot of thinking in what slots you want, but I mean, when I sit at this base, I'm often finding where, oh, I have extra slots to waste. Let me just, throw something in there. Let's do that. I mean, because this base almost has too much for you to do. So I think for my taste, I prefer to use other bases over this one only because this base just doesn't give me a lot of thinking and strategy that I like. I like to, strategically plan out my base. That way, okay, I have my base set up just how I want it, and, this is a great combination for my base. With the container fort, I mean, I don't really have to do a lot of thinking if I don't really want to. Like, I can just, okay, let's throw this there, let's throw a farm there, let's throw that there, okay, we're good. Like, I do thinking fort anyways, because I was just at the container fort and I switched today, and I did have my base set up at the container fort, that way it was really advantageous. But even so, if I didn't want to, I could just, go willy-nilly, throw whatever I want in there, and I'd probably still be okay, for the most part. So, I guess it's not really a knock against this base, but I would just say, instead of a knock, it's more of, less of a challenge to use this base, is how I put it. So, Container Fort is an amazing base, and it does a lot of great things for you, and if you're a newer player, I would definitely say, go to the Container Fort, play there and try it out, because if you play at the Container Fort, this is going to teach you a lot about the game. The Container Fort gives you a lot of room to learn about the game, and that's what I love about it, and it's great for learning about the game. But if you already know a lot of the ins and outs of the game, it's a little bit boring in a sense for you, because you don't have to do a whole lot to make it work. It already works for you. It already does the job for you. So it's more of a less of a challenge, I would say, to play at this base. It's not really a knock per se, because technically speaking, I mean, this base does the job that you want. Everything done that you want, and that's really the only possible negative I have to say about it. I mean, maybe if you wanted to say, only has 3 parking slots instead of 4, but I mean, 3 parking slots instead of 4, you can make that work pretty easily. And the parking situation for this base, it is a little bit boxed in. It's not that much open, so it is a little bit harder to fit cars into those parking spots, but it's not anything you can't handle. I mean, I was just handling it for, a while, and then I just switched bases today. I switched bases today to try out some of the other bases before this podcast, because even though I had tried out some of the other bases beforehand, I wanted to try them out a little bit more just to get a better feel for them. But my recommendation for Undead Labs, take away that passive slot that has the built-in barracks level 2, because that passive slot makes this base a little bit too overpowered, and it takes away some of the thinking of the base. So I think if that passive slot is taken away, then I think it still provides a lot of opportunity for new players to explore, and it also provides more opportunity for experienced players to set things up the way that, makes it challenging for them, because for experienced players, with having that 8 beds already built in, it doesn't give a lot of challenge for us right now. So I think if you just take away that passive slot, some people might be upset about that, but I think it makes the game more balanced that way, because then if that passive slot is gone, it's going to give experienced players more of a challenge, and it's going to give newer players a little bit of a challenge to where they can still explore with this base, but it's going to give them a little bit of a challenge because they have to solve that issue of having beds. So I think that is the fix to make this base more balanced, in my opinion. Overall, great base. I mean, it's got a ton of slots, like 5 small and 2 large. Slot wise, you can't really want much more than that. So it is a great base in terms of that. And I will give a quick shout out to my friend Maris on YouTube. I know he doesn't like this base, but as much as he doesn't like it, I mean, it's hard to knock much about this base because it does do a lot of things for you. So the only other thing I'll say is at 3,500 influence, it does cost a lot to get this base. So I probably prefer to keep my influence and use one of the smaller bases and make that work for me just to have more influence, because the value for this base, it might be a little bit overpriced. But and again, having those beds built in, it kind of takes away some of the overpricing. So 3,500 influence is probably pretty fair for this, but I would just probably prefer to keep some of my influence and use one of the other bases perhaps. But last but not least, we have one more base to talk about. We have more and more distributing. And more distributing is actually the base that I am currently at in Cascade HIlls. That's not necessarily meaning that that's my favorite base. That's just because when I was trying out the bases today, that one is like in the middle of nowhere, and that was the last one I went to try out. So that's just kind of where I'm situated right now. But it costs $1,500 to claim, and you need 6 people to claim it. The existing facilities, it has a shelter beds level 2. It has a machine shop, has 4 parking slots. It has a huge fuel storage. It's got a backup generator. It's got 2 large slots that are open, and it has 1 small indoor slot and 2 small outdoor slots that are open. So basically, all in all with this base, you have 2 large slots and 3 small. And then you got your 4 parking, which your parking is great. The machine shop being built in, that's very handy as well, because you don't have to worry about your workshop. That's already built in for you. So that is, a huge relief, because then you don't have to waste a small slot on that. You have those small slots to do what you want with them. And the shelter beds being built in, I mean, if this took away some of the small slots, then I'd probably be a little bit upset about it, but it doesn't. So, that does help. And I think these shelter beds, I think, having those there actually is really big help to you, because a lot of these bases don't have, it has 1 shelter beds level 2 and that's it. But this one actually has an extra shelter bed. So if you upgrade that, you get an extra sleeping spot. That is very helpful to have the extra available, because right now, I think my community is at 8 people right now. I like to keep my community at 8 people. I know some people like to go up to 12, which you can go up to 12 if you use some tricks, but I like to keep mine at 8 just because it keeps it more streamlined for me. And for me, it just, it makes it better for me management-wise to have 8 people. So I like to keep 8 people, and if I find someone that's really good that, is recruitable, then I'll usually kick one of my people out that isn't as active or isn't as, useful to me. But I kind of like to stay 8 people personally, and for 8 people right now, I upgraded one of the shelter beds, and I have 1 beds outpost, and that takes care of my bed situation right there. So, beds wise, that works out well for me. And I mean, honestly, this base is definitely a base that you can stay at for a long time, and definitely a base that you can actually make work for you very well. The backup generator, I would say, if you already have, free power and water from the builder legacy boon, then this isn't going to be useful to you at all. But that being said, if you don't have that, it's nice to have this backup generator, because all you have to do is, click a button for 1 field and you get power. So I think it only lasts an hour, but still, it's great to have that there. The huge fuel storage, they weren't kidding with this. I mean, it gives you plus 100 or something like that fuel. So right now, my base, I have 147 fuel storage. So that is crazy. And I mean, I'm never even going to have enough fuel to fill it up. So the one negative thing about that, though, is with this, I mean, the huge fuel storage doesn't do a lot for you, because I would say fuel is the thing you need the least storage of. I mean, if I only had like 15 or 20 field storage, I could probably get away with that. Like, what I would rather have is I would rather have like 140, material storage, because materials, I always find a lot of materials, I don't need to use them. So I would rather have a lot of material storage than field storage. But I mean, if you are going through a lot of fuel and you're using a lot, this is a way to, make use of that. The 4 parking spots is very nice too. And honestly, this base is a great base. I mean, it definitely works well for you. It definitely does everything you want it to do. It's a base that I'm going to try out for a little while in my playthrough, just because, which I'll say real quick, one of the things I would like the devs to hopefully fix in the future is, I went from the container fort today, and I went to some of the smaller bases to try them out, and I lost so much influence because I had 9,999 influence, so I was maxed out on influence, and just by going to a couple different bases to try them out, I lost 3,000 influence. So it feels kind of crummy to me. Like, I'm not that worried about it because I can always regain the influence. Like, I'm not worried about regaining influence, but it does feel kind of crummy that I lose 3,000 influence just because I wanted to try some other bases out. So I would say that's something that the devs should maybe look into in the future when they're trying to, balance things a little more, is it shouldn't feel crummy to the player that, you want to try other bases out, and because you want to try other bases out, you're losing your influence. Like, I understand what they did with the nerfing the outpost situation, because they nerfed that in patch 3.0 to where if you, destroy an outpost, you lose 60% of that. But I feel like with the bases, you shouldn't be discouraged from trying out other bases. Like, I feel like, this is the zombie apocalypse and your community is surviving. If, one of your members is out on a scavenger run and they go, oh, they get back to your base, they go, oh, hey, Jim, I found this really cool base that we could use. I really think this church on the hill could be a great base for us. Maybe we should move our community to the church on the hill. Maybe it's going to work out well for us there. But then the other guy's like, well, it's going to cost us too much influence to go there. I'm sorry, we can't do that, That's kind of how it feels a little bit. Like, obviously, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, of course, but that just kind of gives you a little bit of the sense of how I'm feeling in my mind, is that it's a little bit discouraging to go to other bases just because you lose your influence by doing that. Especially in a situation where I'm going from a 3,500 cost base in the container fort to, like, I think I went to Lock and Key next because it was the closest one to me. I went to Lock and Key, which costs 1,500, and I lose my influence. Like, if I'm going from one that costs more to one that costs less, I really think in that situation, you should be not losing influence. I could kind of understand if, say, I went from like the bridge fort to, I don't know, the container fort, if I went from the bridge fort to the church on the hill. Like, I understand losing your influence in that situation more, because in that situation, you're going to a base that costs more, so you're going to have to pay more to get that, obviously. But I think, because I thought your influence was refunded completely when you switch bases, but apparently that's not working properly, or I'm not sure, because I thought, earlier in the game before some of these patches that you would leave a base, go to a new base, you'd be refunded all your influence. That's what I thought happened, but maybe somewhere along the line that changed, because I feel like I should get my 3,500 influence back and then, go to the new base and pay 1,500 for that. But what could have been the issue perhaps is because I was already maxed out in influence, that might be part of the issue, because maybe the game tried to refund me, but because I was already maxed out on influence, maybe the game couldn't do that. So that might be where my issue lies. Because I remember when I went from the container fort to Lock and Key, I ended up with 8,400 influence. So maybe that was part of the issue, where the game couldn't actually pay me the influence that I was supposed to get, and maybe that's why that happened. Or it could just be an issue that maybe they took away the ability to refund influence when you switch bases. But I would say that either way, regardless, that's something for the devs to look into, because I think that it's kind of a negative situation for players when you switch bases and you have to worry about losing a lot of influence just because you want to try out a different base. So I think that takes away some of the effect that Undead Labs might want for you to... I would feel that Undead Labs probably wants you to try different bases. So if they want you to try different bases, I think that kind of negates that effect. But that being said, I'm not that worried about it, obviously. I mean, like I said, I can always get more influence, but it kept happening to me because I went from Lock and Key. I next went to the Church on the Hill. I lost more influence. I went from the Church on the Hill to more and more distributing. I lost more influence. So I started with 9999 influence, and I ended up with like 6,500 influence. So it feels weird that like, oh, let me go try out these bases, and I lose like 3,000 influence by trying out bases. But it's not a huge issue. I would just say for a newer player that isn't as confident about getting more influence, it'd probably be a bigger sting for them, because if you're someone that, isn't as familiar with the game and you're not, confident that you can get your influence back, it might feel like a bigger kick in the teeth to you that, oh, I just worked really hard for this influence. I got all the way up and now I just lost it all because I wanted to try a different base. Like, I feel like for a newer player, that's really going to discourage them from wanting to switch bases. So I really think it's, in Undead Lab's best interest to take a look into this and maybe rework that a little bit, or maybe it's a bug that I was experiencing, or I'm not really sure where the issue lies, if it's a bug or if it's in the game's design now, or how that exactly is supposed to be working. But I think regardless, it should be working to where you don't have to worry as much about switching bases because you want to try one out. So that is just my personal view on that. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. If Undead Labs wants to change that, then great. If they don't, then I'm still going to enjoy the game the way it is. Like, I'm not worried about it on a personal level. Just, I think for other players, it's something that really could deter them from wanting to play this game more. So I think it's in the best interest of the game that this does change slightly. But that being said, I mean, I don't have a lot left to say about more and more distributing. It's a pretty good base, honestly. I mean, I think the huge field storage is, fairly unnecessary. It's not going to do a lot of wonders for you. But I think this base is one that you can sustain very well at. And I think this is worth the 1,500 influence cost to go here, because you're already going to have that machine shop built in, which is great. You're going to have 4 parking slots, which is great. So I think it's worth the cost it takes to get here. And I definitely think it's one worth having. But the other knock against it, I will say, is this is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, like, this is the most middle of nowhere base you can ever get, because this is in like the top right corner of the map. And with this base, I mean, it's just a pain because there's nothing else around it. Like, most of the bases, there's at least stuff to loot around it. This base doesn't even have things to loot around it. Like, there's one shed next to it, and that's about it. There's nothing else around this base to really loot. So in that respect, I mean, the one good thing is you're probably not going to get a lot of infestations around you, because there's nowhere to put an infestation because there's no buildings around. But on the other side of that, I mean, there's nothing for you to loot. So if you're a new player and you go here, you're going to have a hard time looting because there's not a lot around here. So you're going to have to take your car and go all over the map. And that's also a knock against it, in my view. And that being said, real quick, I'll just go over the locations for some of the other bases in here, because I didn't specifically name where they are on the map. So, more and more is in the top right. The container fort, that is going to be located in the south of the map. It's going to be on the southwest of the map, towards the bottom. The lock and key self-storage, that will be in the northwest. So if you go all the way to the northwest, it's pretty much in the corner. The container fort and the lock and key, they have a lot more things to search around them. The Just to Know house, that is going to be in the southeast. So in the southeast part of the map, it has a little bit to search around it. The corner office, that's pretty much dead in the center of the map. It's got a huge community around it, so there's a lot to search around that. I mean, corner office probably has the most to search around it than any other base. So that is, a plus for it in some senses. The Church on the Hill, that is also in the center of the map, but it's a little bit further east. So it's pretty much in the center, just a little bit further east. And the Bridge Fort is, it's not exactly center, but it's not exactly east. It's kind of like, I don't know, mid-east in the map. I mean, it's kind of a little bit hard to describe, but it's basically fairly far south, over to the east more. So, and it obviously, is around a river because it's a bridge fort. But it's kind of a hard location to describe with audio a little bit. But if you look, if you go down to the south of the map more, and it's on the east side a little bit more, And if you're looking from the Justino house, it's pretty much directly west of the Justino house. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an inkling where it is, but that's kind of the locations for these bases. So that being said, we will go through my rankings now. So we'll jump right in there. Number 7 on my rankings is the bridge fort, actually. And I don't want people to get discouraged because the bridge fort, I do really like the aesthetics of it, but with this map, it was hard with this map because it was even hard to pick number 7 because honestly, all 7 of these bases, they're all interesting in their own way. Well, maybe the starting base isn't as interesting, but because we've seen it before, but all these bases are interesting in their own way. So, like, even though Bridgefort is number 7 on my list, it's not like it's not worth trying it out. It's definitely worth trying it out, and it's definitely a fun base. But the Bridgefort, it just doesn't cut it for the value for you. I mean, you're paying 500 influence, and all you're really getting is you're losing beds, you're gaining a large slot, and you're getting a couple of watchtowers that you probably don't really need. So it's not really worth it for you to use this. The other thing I didn't mention before too is, you can park 3 cars there, but a couple cars are parked on one side and a couple cars parked on the other side. So you have like a river in between you. So it's kind of like separating your cars. So it's kind of weird in that way. But I mean, the Bridge Fort is one that if you haven't tried it yet, I would try it. If you've already tried it, then I probably wouldn't go back there because it's hard to sustain a good community there. Number 6 is the corner office. And I've even put in the corner office number 6. And this is one that I've actually spent a lot of playtime with myself. I mean, I used this the first time I beat this map. I used the corner office. So it's one that I've actually used a good deal myself. And the location is great. And that's why I actually went there the first time, is the location being right in the center like that. The location is very nice. Just, again, for the value it gives you, it doesn't give you that great of value. But yeah, I mean, it's not that bad of a base. It's just, it doesn't give you the value that you want for your next base. So it's a base that, again, I wouldn't recommend using, much more than your first time, because especially with that parking situation, the parking situation at the corner office is one of the worst parking situations in the game, just because it's 2 slots, and those 2 slots are so congested that you really can't fit a lot of cars there. So the parking situation is one of the worst of this base, actually. Number 5, we have the Justino house. Some people might be a little bit surprised that I made it to number 5 on my list, but the way Undead Labs and, Brian Giammi built these bases, they actually made the starting base, very viable. I mean, I would rather stay at the Justino house and, wait to build up influence than go to the corner office of the Bridge Fort. And that's kind of what this ranking is for, because in my personal opinion, you're better off to stay at the Justino house and not go to the Bridge Fort and not go to the corner office, because in my opinion, the Justino house can do more for you for better value. You're paying nothing to stay there, so you didn't have to use any influence to stay there at all. And if you save up your influence, you can go to one of the ones that are above this base instead. The corner office and the Bridge Fort, they're not going to be as great value for you. They're okay. They can work for you for a little while, but the Justino house, it can get the job done for you, and it can keep you sustainable into the mid-game. If you want to, you can stay at the starting base until the mid-game, and you're pretty good. I mean, you can't end the game here because it doesn't have a large slot, but it sustains you pretty well, honestly. Number 4 is actually going to be the base that I'm currently at, more and more distributing. So for me, more and more distributing, it's a decent base. I mean, it can get the job done a little bit, but the backup generator and the huge fuel storage, having those built in, I think is a little bit of a downside in the sense that it's not something that every player is going to really need or, want to use. And it does have a couple shelter beds there, which that's nice. That does help you out. But for my taste, you can get better value elsewhere. I mean, for 1,500, it's not like it's a bad value. It's just for more and more, I think there's other bases that provide a better situation for you for, that are more cost effective, I would say. It does have the machine shop, though, which is nice to have the machine shop built in, and does have 4 parking slots, so it's definitely a solid base. It's just, I think other bases are a little bit more solid. Next, at number 3, though, we have the Church on the Hill. And I actually consider making this number 4, but I think it's a little bit better than More and More. The reason why is this base allows you to do a little bit more than More and More. No, that pun wasn't intended, but it just kind of happened on the fly. But this base, Church on the Hill, it has one large slot and it has 5 small slots. So, basically the things that you get from More and More, you get that machine shop built in, but you can just take one of your small slots from Church on the Hill and build that machine shop pretty much. So it's not like it's giving you that much difference. And this also comes with a free morale boost from the Gorgeous Environment, which, it is a gorgeous environment around that base too. And the bell tower, if that works the way it's supposed to, or even if it doesn't, it still helps you out by giving you -7 zombie threat. So you have, chance to get very little threat at this base, which that is very nice to have very little threat at your base if you want to play it that way. It's got 4 parking slots, which, 4 parking slots is the most amount you can have at any base. And it's just honestly a fun base to use. I mean, I think this base is just better than More and More in general, because even though it doesn't have the second large slot, which, it'd be nice to have that extra large slot, I think it provides you better value at 1,000 influence than the 1,500 influence More and More does. And More has things built into there that you don't really need, in my opinion. So while it'd be nice for the Church on the Hill to have 2 large slots, I think you can get it done with 1 large slot. I think you could really enjoy your experience there. And that's part of what this is about, is enjoying our experience. So I think you can have a better experience at Church on the Hill, because the other factor of that is Church on the Hill is closer to a lot of other resources than More and More is. And that is one factor I'm using in these rankings, is More and More is so far out of the way of everything else in the map that it's just so hard to justify staying there for a long time. I mean, I'm going to try it out for a little bit in my current playthrough, just because I want to say, yeah, I tried it out for a little bit and I stayed there for a while. But I mean, I think I'm going to have a better experience at the Church on the Hill or the 2 bases above this, because the Church on the Hill, you can actually scout and get some resources. There's stuff around you. I mean, of course, you can always drive a car anywhere you want. I mean, that's always an option. It's just at More and More, like, you're always going to have to drive, pretty far away to get to somewhere. And not only that, some of the roads around More and More, they're like dirt roads, and it's just harder to navigate around that base, and there's not as much around there. So for me, More and More, it just doesn't cut it as much, just from those factors. Church on the Hill, it cuts it a lot more for a lot less. So I think Church on the Hill is your better number 3 base. All right, number 2 and number 1, it was a hard decision for me. It's obviously between the Container Fort and Lock and Key. But after much deliberation and after talking through this, I think for my personal taste, it's going to have to be number 2 is Container Fort and number 1 is Lock and Key. And the reason why is kind of like I was talking about before a little bit. For me as a gamer, I like a little bit more of a challenge for my mind, and I like to, really analyze things and think about them and think about how I can actually best use my resources. And that's what I love about State of Decay. So I think for the game that State of Decay is, I think the Container Fort makes it a little bit too easy for my personal taste. So technically speaking, if I was to go just on, technical pure stats, nothing else, technically based on the stats, the Container Fort might be number 1 based on the stats. But when you involve your own personal taste a little bit and how things work for you, I think for me, Container Fort has to be number 2, because even with the 8 free beds that it gives you with the barracks and everything like that, it just makes it a little bit too easy for me, where I don't really have to do a lot of thinking. I like to, design my base a certain way and be like, oh, I built this base, it took me a lot of time to think this out and, make this the way I want it. And it's really cool the way I have it right now. And, you want to be proud of your base. And I'm not saying you can't be proud of your base at Container Fort, because you definitely can. But I've heard a lot of people, are at the Container Fort, and it just feels weird, if everyone's at the Container Fort, and it feels like you can almost make a setup out of thin air that can work for you, because this Container Fort has so many options available, and the fact that it includes the beds too, it just makes it a little bit too easy for my type of playstyle. Like, I am very analytical, and I like to analyze things a lot. So for me, there's not as much analyzing involved with this, because it's too much open space. It's too much broad spectrum that I can do literally anything at the Container Fort, and I can be okay. With Lock and Key, I think that has some unique features and unique style to it that I really like the style of it. I mean, that secret distillery, I love having the distillery, because I like to make whiskey with my trader leader and use that to sell for influence. And then on top of that, it has that elaborate storage. And that elaborate storage is so nice. Having 45 storage for everything, that is huge. And that is something unique to that base that you can't get elsewhere. So, plus the watchtower that's available there, that watchtower is really cool too. I think if I remember right, it does cost you ammo to use that watchtower, but even so, I would rather spend that ammo on the watchtower and make a little bit of my challenge for myself. Because even the bed situation, it's going to be a little bit more challenging for me to stay at lock and key, but I'll take that challenge. I'll accept that challenge and I'll make it work. I'll make a base there that can work. It's going to give me a little bit of a challenge, but it's also going to provide me a lot of benefit. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, stats-wise, the container fort technically probably is the best base stats-wise. It's hard for me to argue against that stats-wise, but when I involve my personal opinion a little bit and how I like to play, I think lock and key self-storage is more my type of play style. I think lock and key suits me better as a player, and that's kind of where I'm at. So, lock and key is number 1. The container fort is number 2. The church on the hill is number 3. More and more distributing is number 4. The Just to Know house is number 5. The corner office is number 6. And the bridge fort is number 7. And, that's all 7 bases at Cascade HIlls. That's pretty much everything you need to know about them. So I hope everyone enjoyed this, and I hope, you got a lot of benefit from it. I hope my analysis helps you, and, hopefully some of the comments I made, Undead Labs will take those into account and maybe look at potentially switching some things up in the future. Because I'm not sure if I had some bugs going on, but there's some issues I have with some of the bases here that I think could be, changed to give the players a better experience. So hopefully, we can change some of those things in the future, like the bell tower and the fact that I'm going, trying different bases out. I'm losing influence by trying different bases out. I think that's something that's very negative for newer players. And while I don't mind it personally, and I'm okay with it because I can just regain the influence pretty easily, for newer players, I think it's really going to deter them from playing this game for a long time when they're, trying to play the game, they're trying to enjoy it, and then all of a sudden they lose influence just because they want to try a different base out. So, again, I'm not sure if that was just a bug I was having, because I could have swore that early on in the game, I was getting influence back when I switched bases, but maybe I had a bug where I wasn't getting that, or if that's the way it's supposed to be now, then I think that should be looked into and potentially changed. But, that being said, I hope you enjoyed this. I'll, say again that our next stream we're going to do is going to be on mixer.com/Blaise XPerience. That stream will be streaming Vigor. That'll be Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And our next episode of the podcast will be on Sea of Thieves, which will launch on Wednesday. If you want to find the podcast, you can find us on Acast, Blueberry, iTunes, Podbean. You can find us on Google Play, Google Podcast, Radio Public, pretty much any podcast directory for the most part. And of course, don't forget that we have our DecayFest coming up. I talked about that at the start of the episode. This is going to be so exciting, and I'm really looking forward to working with these other content creators to create some great content for a week. So DecayFest will be happening September 9th to September 15th. So just throw that in your calendar somewhere and, okay, this week is going to be DecayFest, and I got a State of Decay content all week. So it's going to be a great week, and I'm really excited for that week. So we're going to get a new DLC. We're going to, get some content from some great content creators. These are all great people. They all provide great content, and I really think you're going to enjoy their content, and hopefully you enjoy mine as well. So, which if you're listening to this, you probably do, but hopefully, you're going to enjoy all the content regardless. And we will have more news coming about that soon. But, stay tuned. If you want to join my Discord, then there will be a link in the show notes, and you can, talk to me about your thoughts on that, and you can get more news about that, because that's probably the first place I'm going to announce news is my Discord, but I will be announcing news in the podcast as well as we come along. So stay tuned for Wednesday's episode on Sea of Thieves, because Wednesday I might have more news. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how things are going, but definitely by next Saturday. So definitely next Saturday I will have a lot more news on the schedule for that. So you can assume that next Saturday's episode, there will be plenty of news on DecayFest. But until we get there, you can contact me on Twitter at Blaise XPerience, or find me on Xbox Live. My gamer tag is Blaise XPerience as well. So for Twitter and my Xbox gamer tag, it's capital BLAISE, capital X, capital P, ERIENCE. If you want to email me, that's perfectly fine as well. You can email me, theblaisexperience@gmail.com. And those are pretty much the main ways to contact me. So, I really appreciate everyone checking out this episode, and it means a lot. So, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the Blaise Experience.